title, World War II in 12 Maps that explain everything. World War II was the most destructive conflict in human history. Between 1939 and 1945, nations across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific were drawn into a war that reshaped borders, destroyed cities, and changed the balance of global power forever. For many people, the story of the war can seem overwhelming because it involved dozens of countries, multiple fronts, and countless battles. But if we look at the conflict through maps, the story becomes clearer. Each map shows how power shifted, how armies moved, and how decisions made by leaders changed the fate of millions. By examining 12 key maps, we can understand how the war began, how it spread across continents, and how it finally came to an end. The first map shows Europe in 1938, just before the war began. At this time, the continent still carried the scars of the First World War. Germany had lost territory and power after the Treaty of Versailles. But under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, the country had begun to rebuild its military and challenge the post-war order. Many Europeans feared another conflict, yet they also hoped diplomacy could prevent it. Germany had already absorbed Austria in 1938 and demanded control over parts of Czechoslovakia. European leaders attempted to maintain peace through negotiations. But the map of Europe was already beginning to change. The second map reveals the moment when the war truly began. In September 1939, Germany invaded Poland from the west using a fast and coordinated military strategy known as Blitzkrieg or Lightning War. German forces used tanks, aircraft, and mechanized infantry to break through defenses quickly and overwhelm the Polish army. Only weeks later, the Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east under a secret agreement with Germany. Within a month, Poland was divided between the two powers. Britain and France responded by declaring war on Germany, officially starting World War II. The third map shows how quickly Germany expanded across Europe in 1940 and 1941. After defeating Poland, Germany turned its attention westward. Denmark and Norway were invaded to secure strategic positions in northern Europe. Soon after, German forces launched a powerful offensive through Belgium and the Netherlands, bypassing the heavily fortified French defenses. Within weeks, France collapsed, Paris fell, and much of Western Europe came under German control. Britain remained the only major power in Western Europe still resisting Nazi expansion. The fourth map highlights the Battle of Britain and the struggle for control of the skies in 1940. Germany attempted to defeat Britain by launching a massive air campaign. German bombers attacked cities, airfields, and industrial centers in an effort to weaken British resistance and prepare for a possible invasion. However, the Royal Air Force successfully defended the country. Radar technology, strong leadership, and determined pilots helped Britain survive the attack. This moment was crucial because it prevented Germany from dominating Western Europe completely. The fifth map shifts our attention eastward to one of the most important decisions of the war. In June 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. This was the largest land invasion in history. Millions of German soldiers advanced across a massive front, stretching from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea at first. German forces captured vast territories and surrounded large Soviet armies. Cities such as Kiev and Smolensk fell quickly. But the Soviet Union had enormous resources and territory, and the war on the Eastern Front soon became a brutal struggle of endurance. The sixth map shows the expansion of Japan across Asia and the Pacific. While Europe was already at war, Japan had been fighting in China for several years. By 1941, Japanese leaders sought to control resources across Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands. In December 1941, Japan attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. This sudden strike destroyed much of the United States Pacific Fleet and brought the United States into the war. Within months, Japanese forces captured territories including the Philippines, Malaya, Singapore, and large parts of the Dutch East Indies. The seventh map illustrates the moment when the Axis powers reached their greatest territorial extent around 1942. Germany controlled most of Europe, from France in the west to deep inside Soviet territory in the east. Italy held positions in North Africa, and Japan dominated large areas of Asia and the Pacific. At this stage, it appeared that the Axis alliance might win the war. However, the vast size of the territories they controlled also created enormous logistical challenges and stretched their military resources. The eighth map focuses on one of the most decisive turning points of the war, the Battle of Stalingrad between 1942 and 1943, located on the Volga River. The city was strategically important for controlling southern Russia and access to oil fields. German forces entered the city after months of fighting, but Soviet troops refused to surrender. Instead, they launched a massive counteroffensive that surrounded the German Sixth Army. After months of brutal urban combat and severe winter conditions, the German army was forced to surrender. This defeat marked the beginning of a major shift on the Eastern Front. The ninth map moves to Western Europe in 1944 and shows the Allied invasion of Normandy, often called D-Day. After years of planning, Allied forces from Britain, the United States, Canada, and other countries landed on the beaches of northern France. On June 6, 1944, thousands of ships and aircraft supported the operation, making it the largest amphibious invasion in history. Despite heavy resistance, the Allies established a foothold in France and gradually pushed German forces back across Western Europe. The 10th map demonstrates how Germany was gradually surrounded from both east and west during 1944 and early 1945. Soviet forces advanced westward after their victories on the Eastern Front, liberating large areas of Eastern Europe. At the same time, Allied forces pushed eastward after liberating France and Belgium. German cities were heavily bombed, and the country's military capacity weakened rapidly. By early 1945, Allied armies were closing in on Berlin, the capital of Nazi Germany. The 11th map shows the final phase of the war in Asia. Even after Germany surrendered in May 1945, Japan continued to fight across the Pacific. The United States and its allies captured island after island, moving closer to the Japanese mainland. However, invading Japan directly was expected to cause enormous casualties. In August 1945, the United States dropped atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These attacks caused devastating destruction and forced Japan to surrender shortly afterward. 12th and final map reveals the world after the war ended in 1945. Europe was left devastated. Many cities were destroyed, economies collapsed, and millions of people were displaced. Germany was divided into occupation zones controlled by the Allies, and Eastern Europe fell under the influence of the Soviet Union. This division soon led to the Cold War, a long period of political tension between the Western powers and the Soviet bloc. The war also led to the creation of the United Nations, an organization intended to promote international cooperation and prevent future global conflicts. Looking at these 12 maps together allows us to understand the broader story of World War II. What began as a regional conflict in Europe quickly, it became a global war involving dozens of nations. Territorial expansion, strategic decisions, and key turning points all shaped the outcome. The maps reveal how quickly borders changed and how fragile peace can be when powerful nations pursue aggressive ambitions. For Europe, the war left deep scars but also important lessons. The devastation encouraged European nations to cooperate more closely in the decades that followed. Institutions such as the European Union were eventually formed with the goal of preventing another catastrophic war on the continent. Today, the maps of World War II serve not only as historical records but also as reminders of the consequences of conflict. Understanding the war through maps helps simplify an incredibly complex story. Each map represents a moment when the course of history shifted. When viewed together, they explain how the world moved from fragile peace in the late 1930s to global war, and finally toward reconstruction and a new international order after 1945.